To remember to record. That would have been bad if I'd forgotten to record the whole thing. But we're going to make a start, folks. Welcome to the very first Health Action Training webinar, the first of many over the next 3 years. And this is a webinar looking at person-centered communication. You're all very, very welcome. Hopefully you've managed to join okay and you can hear us all. You should have access to the chat box. Anybody coming in as an attendee, you should be able to put into there and say hi to everybody. Encourage you to use the chat to say who you are, introduce yourself, where are you joining us from, what's your practice area, so on and so forth. It'd be great to see some activity in the chat box. I want to draw your attention also, folks, to the Q&A box. And the Q&A box is going to be the place in which we, thanks Fritas leading the charge there with a chat box in there, a chat message. So the Q&A box is where we're going to host most of the questions that you may have for the panel. And we can use that over the next hour and a half or so. So before we start, I'm just going to quickly give an outline of what this webinar is going to entail, and then we're going to move straight into the first part and our first speakers of the day. This webinar is going to try to do things slightly differently. We're going to try to share the expertise that we have in this panel on this topic of person-centered communication. As it's the first webinar as well, we're going to talk a little bit about the partner organizations for the project, and including who we are, what organizations we work with, and a little bit about what we hope to achieve in the next 3 years with these webinars. We're then going to shift gears after the presentational element to try to share the health action training approach in all of its interactiveness. As many people here know, there's I think a few people joining us who have taken HAT training, and maybe people haven't, which is great. We advocate for experiential, dialogical, and interactive learning. So we're going to try to do that in a webinar format. And we'll talk more about how that's going to happen when we get there. But just a heads up, hopefully we're going to be able to invite a group of you to join us for some activities in the second half of this session. I'm going to quickly do a quick round and allow the panelists to introduce themselves briefly before we move on to, actually, in fact, we're going to go straight into the presentational parts because the folks on the panel will introduce themselves in time. We do have time for Q&A, folks. So do keep adding any questions that you have into the Q&A function or to the chat box. We have Maysoon here who's helping us out in everything to do with the webinar, who's going to be keeping an eye on all of the questions you might have in the Q&A and the chat box. So without further rambling from me, I'm going to pleasingly hand over to, let's start with Professor Aisha Holloway from the Nursing Now Challenge Program Director of the Nursing Now Challenge. And then we're going to hear soon after from Libby Rowlands as well from Cavell. We're inviting this pair of wonderful people to the webinar to introduce who they are, what they do with the organisation they work with, information about the organisation they work with, and a little bit on the partnership that they have with Health Action Training and what we hope to achieve in this new project over the next 3 years. So again, that's enough waffling from me. I'm going to hand straight over to you, Aisha, Professor Holloway.
Thank you so much, Carl, and welcome everyone. It's lovely to be part of this wonderful initiative, and I'm very honoured to have the opportunity to speak to you all or speak with you all. I do have some slides, but I'm always very wary of technical issues. So I might just try it. If it doesn't work, don't worry. Oh, wow, I've just seen my new boss, Claire Cable, has joined, the new chief exec of Burdett Trust for Nursing. So that's wonderful. Welcome, Claire. I'm going to just try this. If this doesn't work, then we will. Is that working? Is that working?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Super dupes. Okay, so I think visually this will be useful in terms of information to everyone. So the Nursing Now Challenge is a program of the Burdett Trust for Nursing. The Burdett Trust for Nursing is one of the largest charities for nursing in the UK, and we are lucky enough to be a program of that. My role is the program director, along with a team which consists of two other colleagues and a whole range of other individuals who are involved in that. We are the largest global network of student and early career nurses and midwives globally. We currently are sitting at 155,000 members of the Nursing Now Challenge from over 1,128 organisations. Our largest number of members come from organisations, but we do have individuals also who are members across 115 countries. And actually, I know that figure was just updated on Friday, and we are up to about 166,000. So we are growing fast. Since June, we have had a number of new countries join, and it's not slowing down. Hopefully, some of you maybe are members. If you're not, please get in touch with us and let us know. The amazing thing about this opportunity is that it's totally free. Individuals and organisations can join. Our preference is for organisations to join, but we do not stop individuals from joining. So we work with individuals, health employers, universities, colleges around the world to ensure that students and early career nurses and midwives do and have the opportunity for personal professional development. Hence, we work closely with HAT. They are the providers of one of our very, very well received programs around personal and professional development using innovative techniques. And I know that many of you who are on the panel are aware of this. Some of you, this will be the first time you've been exposed to this type of thing, but let me tell you, it is transformational experience, both personally and professionally. The Nursing Now Challenge itself focuses on four key pillars, but our mission really is around the development and opportunities for those early individuals in those moments of their career, nursing, midwifery, as students, to expand their horizons, become the leaders they want to be, lead on research and innovation, and they do that through networking resources that we offer to organisations and to individuals. We have a fantastic advisory board, and you will recognise the face here, Maureen, who is absolutely a complete superstar and has been with us since Nursing Now back in the day. And you're so well, I'm not going to say lucky, but you will know how wonderful she is after you've heard her presentation today. And we have a number of colleagues from across the globe who sit on our board. And we also have our early career nurses who sit there too. I just want to move on to the Challengers Committee specifically, and that is the engine house, I would call, of Nursing Now Challenge, where those of you who really want to be involved in high-level opportunities, you will sit within the Challengers Committee, and generally they work alongside our regional hub leads. We have the structure consists of 6 regions that align to the WHO regions. Each region has 4 early career nurses or midwives, and they are regional hub leads. You'll see that Western Pacific and Eastern Mediterranean, EMRO and WIPRO, are 2 down at the minute, and we're in the process of appointing. And here are these wonderful people, all working clinically, early career nurses, midwives, taking the lead. If you think that might be you, and if you think you would like the opportunity to be challenged to, I guess, take that space where you think, well, why is someone else talking about that? Why are we not doing that? Where are we in terms of visibility in these spaces, locally, nationally, globally? Then Nursing Now Challenge is the family for you to join. And this last slide, I won't go into too much detail, are some of the opportunities that exist within the Nursing Now Challenge, and there are many more. Please contact us at our website. I will put that in the chat. I don't want to take up too much of anyone else's time. It's been a pleasure to have the opportunity to spend a few minutes sharing with you one of the most wonderful things that exist on the planet. And I am biased and I don't care. But enjoy today. I hope you will really just immerse yourself in this experience and take time to reflect on it because the colleagues at HAT just put everything into this and it is exceptional opportunity for you all. Enjoy today and yeah, reflect on this experience because it will be a crucible moment for you. Thank you so much, Carl.
Thank you, Aisha. 167,000 members across the world. That is incredible. That the growth in the last few years, especially, that's really, really amazing to see. And I'm sure there's many people joining here who are part of the Nursing Now Challenge. If you're not, please join. It's free, I believe, and it's you get lots of benefits, notwithstanding access to our training. Thank you, Aisha. And I know you have to leave in a few minutes, so we're really glad.
Sorry to leave.
Yeah,
But have a wonderful day. I wish I was joining. I wish that every time because little top-ups are great. We all need that development, and I am no exception. So thank you. Enjoy today.
thanks, Aisha. Always a pleasure to have you. And we're going to hand over to the other partner in our new project program, Cavell, wonderfully represented by Libby. Libby, I hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Carl. I just want to start by saying a huge thank you, Aisha, for all of that information about the Nursing Now Challenge. It sounds like a really incredible opportunity, and what an amazing thing that you're doing for the nursing community. So thank you so much for that. Thanks, Carl, for the introduction. My name's Libby, and I'm the head of partnerships at Cavell. We are a UK-based charity, and we support nurses and midwives when they're going through tough times, times of hardship or times of crisis. That could be from struggling with the cost of living crisis. It could be that a nurse is a victim of domestic abuse. It could be that someone's been attacked either at home or at work. So we are there to help nurses to get back on their feet because we recognise the amazing work that the nursing profession does. We also are here to help celebrate the achievements of the nursing community, and through our Cavell Star Awards program, this is an opportunity for nurses to recognise their colleagues who are going above and beyond for their patients' families, or for their colleagues. And it's completely free of charge. You can nominate a colleague, and we will send them a certificate and a medal. So that's a way to get a bit of external recognition and validation for your colleagues who are amazing. Um, so in terms of our partnership with Health Action Training, we are delighted to be working with Health Action Training, and we've got two bespoke programs that we're offering to some of our members. So one of them is a return to work course because we recognise that there are a lot of nurses that may have been off on long-term sick. That could be due to mental health reasons. It might be that they've sustained an injury at work. It could be that they've had a cancer diagnosis. So there's a whole ream of reasons why someone might be off on long-term sick. And integrating back into the workplace can be a challenge. And we often hear that there's some anxiety around how they'll navigate those conversations with their bosses, but and also with their colleagues. And so we're delighted to be working with Health Action Training in order to make that integration back into the workplace as seamless as possible. The other course that we're partnered with Health Action Training to deliver is a leadership course, and this really helps leaders and managers to create a place of psychological safety for supporting their colleagues during those times of hardship and crisis, and having those conversations in the most compassionate and person-centered way possible. So I think today's topic is really relevant. We're really delighted and really grateful to be working with the Health Action team, and just want to finish by saying that at Cavell, we think that people who are nurses and work in the nursing community are amazing. And thank you so much for everything that you do.
I couldn't agree more, Livy. I really couldn't. Thank you so much. And maybe I'll take the opportunity, as you mentioned, the topic of the webinar, Libby, Aisha, whilst we have you, and Libby, if you want to add, we're going to try to make this a bit more discussion based as well as presentations, folks. So do you have any thoughts on? Oh, Aisha, you have to be going. That's okay. We won't be doing that then. We'll move on to the next speaker. So you both saved from the question I was about to ask you. But I want to say thank you to Professor Aisha Holloway, and hopefully we'll see you soon. I'm sure we will, and to Libby for speaking on Cavell's behalf. And hopefully we'll see you still here, Libby. So. We'll keep going, folks, and I'm delighted to welcome the next what is the word? Cavell? That's a really great question. Hey, I'm sorry, I get distracted by these chats coming in. This is a really interesting thing. Cavell was the name of Edith Cavell, who was a very influential nurse in the UK. She's buried in my hometown of Norwich, Norwich Cathedral.
Oh,
There's a massive story behind Edith Cavell, which is really, really interesting. And I won't butcher it or go into it in too much detail. I invite you to look into Edith Cavell when you have some time. Libby, do you want to add anything as the representative from Cavell there?
I guess just in a nutshell, Edith Cavell or Cavell, the jury's still out on how you pronounce the name. She was a nurse in World War One and she supported people on both sides of the conflict. So she supported and gave aid to people regardless of where they came from. And she also helped 200 Allied soldiers escape from German occupied Belgium. Eventually, she was executed because of the role that she played. So she was really courageous and, made a huge sacrifice. And so the work that we do today in supporting nurses and midwives, we hope to continue her legacy.
Perfect. Thank you, Livy, for sharing that and a great question. Hey, and do encourage anybody, if you have any questions, to do throw them into the chat box or to the Q&A, and we will try to get to them probably at the end of the panel there. If not, maybe if we can answer them quickly in the session, we will. I'm going to keep going and invite my good friend and colleague, Pat Deeney, who is the CEO of Health Action Training, to give you a little insight into who HAT are and where we come from. They are Pat.
okay. Thank you, Carl. Good morning, good evening, good day. You're very welcome. My name is Pat Deeney, and Carl kindly invited me to speak at this webinar, really to give a brief overview of actually the background to health action training and how we arrived at the idea. Similar to Asia, I would be quite passionate about the subject of actually supporting nurses across the world and get them into leadership roles. And that has always been a hallmark of my work. I am a nurse educator. I've actually 43 years, I think, registered as a nurse in the UK, and I'm still on the register. But as I say, the last 30 years I've worked as a nurse educator. And my background actually is quite important. I'll just expand on it a little because that influenced me a lot in relation to why I ended up contributing to this super idea, revolutionary idea, as I would say. And for many years, I worked in some military settings. I worked in war zones. I worked in Northern Ireland, actually is where I'm from, the city of Derry, which actually was at the heart of many of the conflict and particularly mass casualty incidents and so forth. So my background was very much in emergency care, critical care work. And then I worked in Iraq for quite a few years during the war in the 80s as well. And then went to work with humanitarian agencies. And that influenced how I naturally drifted towards the real need to improve the resilience of nurses worldwide. It really is at the center of everything. And when I became a nurse educator, I naturally went to skills training, and it seems skills and experiential learning is absolutely critical to the development of the individual nurse. And this was quite important because I was one of the first people to create a master's degree in disaster relief healthcare, which actually just finished off actually about 25, it ran for about 25 years, involved many universities in Europe. And that was an idea that came from the former Yugoslavia and the work that went on in Sarajevo. So when I came to work at Ulster University, I naturally wanted to keep the same ideas going, particularly in relation to helping nurses to lead in crisis situations. And if I just read from a note here that I have, actually, separation of humanitarian workers actually is a major theme of my work, and that was really important and linked very nicely with resilience training and helping nurses to deal with the anxiety and the pressure and the threat to life, actually, on many occasions. And I ended up working in the School of Nursing at Ulster University, where I was fortunate to work alongside a guy called Brendan McCormick and a very nice woman called Tanya McCants. And they were the authors of the person-centered framework. And that person-centered framework is very critical to our work. And at one point, we decided as a school that we would change or model our curriculum on Brendan and Tanya's framework. We came up with a problem because to date as nurse educators, we had always adhered to what we know as person-centered, but Carl Rogers, and we actually put a lot of emphasis on the need to be empathetic and the need to be have empathy with the people we care for. So Brendan and Tanya's philosophy value system changed that and moved towards an idea called sympathetic presence, which will become clear as the day progresses. But this idea of sympathetic presence was very difficult to teach, we thought. And that's why we then engaged with the School of Applied Drama. And I met this man called Dr. Matt Jennings, and eventually Carl Tidder-Kleister as well, and many other colleagues that actually showed that combining ideas from actor training with person-centeredness actually help people to flourish even better, to give them ideas on how to do it, how to do person-centeredness. And that was a fantastic development, because to date everybody had an idea. We thought we were being person-centered because our values were proper, but how to do it. And that's really what health action training helped us to achieve. And we tried it out in the early days, actually, with our undergraduate nursing students. I think last count, Matt and I felt that we had exposed about 900 people to it before we actually formed the company. And the company, Health Action Training, was formed about 5 years ago. And we're very grateful to Burdett and for Nursing Now, actually, for the initial support as well that we received. And we now offer a range of programs, but the center of this is actually combining ideas from actor training with person-centeredness. And that doing part that Carl already referred to, the experiential biological approach, is absolutely central. And that's how we are getting the movement. We're finding that not only people are getting new skills and revised value systems, but also they're actually more resilient. The self-care element of it is better. So there, in a way, the circle has been rounded, because where I had an initial goal of helping nurses to be resilient in humanitarian and war zone situations, here we are. We've got the right method now, the right process to do that. And just to close off, actually, a necessary part of that is self-awareness, development of how you actually see yourself in the context of others, but how you actually pay attention to others and note how other people might be reacting. You just sharper, and it has implications for better nursing assessment, far better teamwork, and most definitely helping people in crisis situations to become leaders. So thank you very much, Carl.
Thank you, Pat. What a wonderful overview of who we are, what we do, and where we come from. I'm going to step forward now and kind of talk about oh, look at that. Someone's working away and getting me on the spotlight. Wow, this is the good treatment here. So I'm going to take up from where Pat's left us off, and start talking a bit about the topic at the heart of today's webinar. And I do have slides. And I am very conscious that slides are maybe the antithesis to the idea of being interactive, dialogical, and everything like that. But I think there is a place for slides when we're talking about key principles and ideas that we want to share, particularly when it's ideas and things that we want people to come away with and to remember. So it's not just that we say that this is the only way to do it. We want to improve nursing education in any way that we can across the world. So the first thing I'm going to do is tell you a bit about me. I'm Dr. Carl Tizard-Kleister, and you can see there the title of my PhD study. And you can see really at the core of that study is this idea of person-centered nursing, communication, sympathetic presence, and how can drama impact that. It was quite a journey of a PhD, kind of really paving new ground and walking new paths that was very challenging, but also rewarding. And I echo what Libby said earlier, is that the notion of thankfulness for nurses. I'm not a nurse. I've never practiced as a professional nurse. And over the last 6 to 7 years, when I've been engaged in this type of work, my pride, my admiration in nurses has grown year on year, day on day. I've worked with hundreds of nurses at this point, and I'm always astonished by what nurses can achieve. So this was my PhD, and again, I'm going to briefly kind of go through the main themes here of what I discovered in my research. I basically discovered that using drama within person-centered nursing education, with kind of interpersonal skills at the heart of what we were looking at, is that you help people move from self-centeredness to person-centeredness. So you can see outside of yourself a bit more easily, but also see how important you are as a person is to the care interaction and everything you do. Also help to overcome vulnerability and see vulnerability not as weakness, but as the capacity for growth and the kind of openness that we have for growth. An increased ability to attend to others. Some of the activities we'll be doing in the second part, one of them in particular, will be forcing us to attend to each other very actively. So hopefully we'll get a first-hand experience of that. And then lastly, this idea that we actually perform presence. Some people say that they have and don't have presence, but there is a way that you can use drama practices to change and shift and adapt your presence and how you communicate through your body and your non-verbals, as well as your verbal communication as well. So some of the main contributions of my study obviously focused around this concept of person-centeredness, is it doubled down on this statement from McCormack and McCann that it weaves together the other processes from their framework. I've said for a long time in the training we do that sympathetic presence is the perfect starting point for every interaction that we can have, and I stand by that. There's also this strong link discovered between improved communication skills, resilience, and coping. And I'll talk more about that when I say some stuff on why it's maybe different from empathy and why we choose sympathetic presence as an approach compared to empathy. And then the last one's hopefully fairly straightforward to see, that drama actually was a really good way to identify and train sympathetic presence and person-centered communication. That was my PhD. What I want to shift into thinking about now is why communication? Why is communication important? And I'm sure that everybody here probably agrees that it is important. I hope they do. If there are any skeptics here or any kind of sense of what's the value behind this for, say, an NHS trust, in some research from 2017, the Patient Client Council identified that almost 1/3 of all complaints at one of its NHS trusts was based on interpersonal issues like staff attitude, poor communication, etc. But then on the flip side, 82% of all resolved complaints, and that's every single complaint they got, of all the resolutions to the complaints, it was due to good, re-established, improved communication. So communication is what we call a double-edged sword. It helps us to be better and reduce the number of complaints in the first place, but then it also helps us when there is a complaint, and nobody's perfect, things go wrong, to redress those complaints very effectively. And this saves a lot of money for the NHS. And there's some research done in 2022 by the Department of Health that in Northern Ireland alone, amongst the UK, good communication skills saves the NHS £180 million per year. And that's just in the smallest of the devolved nations of the UK. So imagine what that is UK-wide. Pat mentioned before the person-centered nursing framework, and here it is, sometimes called the DAISY, amongst other things. I think it's a beautiful framework, and it was created through a long development cycle in practice development. And the outcome is this framework, and its aim is to be a guide of how to enact person-centered practice, to not just talk about what does it mean, what does it compare to other things, but what are the features, what are the factors that make person-centered nursing happen, right from the meta paradigm of nursing, the outside layer, everything that makes nursing what it is, all the way into the processes, the petals of the flower. What are the things you can do with the people around you that promote person-centeredness? And in between, we have organizational systems, care environments, prerequisites like interpersonal skills, and so on and so forth. Something that I've found really engaging to discover and explore in the last 6 years is that concept of applied drama is really synergistic with the idea of person-centered nursing. And I'll give one example is the notion of facilitation. In applied drama work, which you can see there's a definition there if you're not sure what applied drama means. In facilitation work and applied drama, it's really critical to understand the people you work with, help people to reach new understanding and to flourish as people. That's the same aim as person-centered nursing. And in 2015, Leishout and Cardiff published a fantastic article on what it means to be a person-centered facilitator. And I really think there is a deep synergy with the idea of how we facilitate people in artistic practice, as well as nursing practice. There's a lot that we can learn from each other in terms of our principles, our approaches, and so on and so forth. I want to just kind of address the elephant in the room of what is sympathetic presence. And I think sympathetic presence is the point at which we communicate with others in a person-centered way. So what is it? Straight from the creators' mouths, McCormack and McCants define it as an engagement that recognizes the uniqueness and value of the individual by appropriately responding to cues. This is important. It's not just I assume who you are. I am the nurse. I know what's happening, and it's going to happen to you whether you like it or not. It's also an acknowledgement that we don't feel and experience things in the same way. And this is a challenge to empathy. Empathy, as it's traditionally seen, this notion that we can feel the pain or the experiences of other people, the emotions of other people. Sympathetic presence is a challenge against that and says, no, we can't. I may experience grief. My grief is completely different from Maureen's, from Pat's, from Rita's, from anybody else on this call. I cannot assume just because I've gone through the same experience that I know what they're going through as well. And that's where it becomes very important, this notion of responding to the cues that people give you. And that's the added notion of presence. Empathy is a feeling. It's closer to an emotional state felt within ourselves. Sympathetic presence is a relationship. We need other people for it to work. You can't, well, you can do it with yourself, but that gets a little bit complicated, and we're not going to go there today. I want to add this from some work that we did back in 2021, and I think it kind of hits on some things where we're really adding in some applied drama terminology in practice here as well. We suggest the nurse is present with the patient, actively listening and attending to how they feel, rather than trying to assume an empathetic understanding of their physical or emotional state. So this notion of being present with, actively listening and attending to other people is crucial for sympathetic presence, whilst knowing that you're not experiencing what they're experiencing and that you shouldn't assume that you know what they're feeling. That's what sympathetic presence is in a nutshell. Hopefully it's clear enough. We can maybe have some questions if anybody wants them in the Q&A box. So I just wanted to kind of really just kind of brass tacks, features of person-centered communication. What makes it different from quote unquote regular communication? I want to go through some principles that kind of punctuate person-centered practice, theoretically and practically, and how I think they work with communication. Firstly, you've got unconditional positive regard. Carl Rogers, as Pat's already mentioned, was a therapist who championed talking therapies and created the term person-centeredness and person-centered practice back in 1950s to the 60s and into the 70s as well. This idea of unconditional positive regard asks you as a practitioner to, regardless of what the other person has done, what you think of them, anything like that, that you treat them with this unconditional positive regard that aims towards compassion, that we're not assuming, stereotyping, discriminating, and all of those things that are negative for a care experience. Next, it relies on this concept of personhood and a respect for identities as they are presented. Remember, we're responding to cues. We're not assuming that just because we've met someone from, I don't know, Istanbul before, that everybody from Istanbul is like that person. We're respecting their identity as they present it. And I've come across this really lovely link here, this notion of what does the word person come from? And it comes from the word persona. And it really highlights how personhood and seeing that as our identity really links into this idea that we assume and put on a persona. Now, it doesn't mean it's inauthentic. That doesn't mean it's fake. That doesn't mean it's pretend. It means we try different personas on to try to match who we feel we are. It's never going to be complete. It's never going to be fully right, but we're trying to present who we want to be in the world all the time. Really love that link to this notion of persona and the masks we wear, going back to performance practice. Already talked about sympathetic presence. I'm not going to talk about that anymore. The next part here, moving from transactional to translational. What does that mean? So what this means is communication is no transaction. I don't just converse with you. I do not communicate at you and through you. It is a two-way street. We are translating our communication between two people or more people. So it's not just I tell you what's going to happen and you say yes, message received. We are actually translating, what do you understand about that message? Do you need extra support? Where do you come from? What are you experiencing this? What can I do to help and guide you more? What do I need to be aware of where I'm coming from and how that might influence how I'm communicating? We are working with each other as people to make that communication more person-centered. I really love this term. The last thing I'll offer here is some possible features of person-centered communication, is that in person-centeredness, what we're trying to achieve is being other-centered without loss of self. We're trying to put the other person at the center of what we're doing, but also reminding ourselves that we have a self, and that's important too. I want to go through the 4 communication models suggested as really, really interesting for person-centered communication from Olin and Freeberg here. They talk about the 4 different features, models of communication, and how that relates to person-centered communication. The first is probably the traditional communication paradigm that we're all very aware of and we probably use most often and talk about most often. That's sender-receiver. I send a message, you receive it, communication done. Tick, great, aren't we fantastic? Very efficient. Often it doesn't work like that. And this, they suggest, Olin and Freeberg suggest, isn't perhaps the most person-centered approach to communication. They move us on to B, which is intersubjective communication, and this relates to Buber's work on I-it and I-thou. The short version of this means you can be communicating with someone as an object, as in an I-it relationship, or as another independent being who has their own subjectivity, an I-thou relationship or an I-you relationship, to use the modern English for it. And this really encourages us to see beyond sending and receiving information to seeing how we are shaped by and how we shape others in the communication we have. We create our subjective experience through our interactions with others quite often. Continuing that thread of the idea of constructionism and constructivity, in part C, we see that we create communicative spaces or communicative arenas, as Olin and Freeberg calls it. And this is an area in which we bring a communication, a conversation to bear with families, patient members, health professionals, receptionists, porters, radio DJ hosts, whoever's in the room. They are part of constructing this area that is a part of a communication. And then lastly, it goes wider, how person-centered communication and communication in general can create society and can create communities. And this is really, I think, a noble aim of person-centered communication, that we're not just trying to send a message and see if the receiver receives it, but in everything we're doing, we're trying to reach that level that we create a culture that is person-centered. In every piece of communication we have, we're trying to foster that compassionate, caring, kind, person-centered society. it's a big ideal. Maybe we'll get there one day. The last thing I'm going to share, and I'm pretty sure I've probably overrun, but not to worry, is these types of communication that, again, are identified by Olin and Freeberg. And I think these are really useful for us to think about what kind of types of communication, as nurses in particular, we can engage in and why they're person-centered. So the first one is problem identifying, and that really involves listening and sharing understanding on what the problem at the heart of an experience in care is. If there is a problem, usually there is. Otherwise, why are you there at the hospital or in the care centre, for example? And that really hinges on listening and making sure that there's shared understanding, that the person you're communicating with understands where you're coming from. If they're a patient and they don't know much about the medical condition that they're suffering with or that they have, you need to make sure that they understand where you're coming from as a healthcare professional. Vice versa, you need to listen and be responsive and open to hearing where they're coming from, what their experience of it is. And you need to come with a shared understanding to identify that problem together. The next part is instructive communication. So we want to help, we want to give instruction and ways forward to help people improve their lives and to flourish. And that's where we come into this idea of participative dialogue. You are not just saying, Pat, go home, take 2 paracetamol, make sure your leg's raised, you'll be fine in the morning. Great, clear, instructive communication, but let's make it participative. Pat, do you have the medication? Pat, do you have the right things to raise your leg? Do you need support with that? How does that make you feel? Asking reflective questions and so on and so forth. This makes it a dialogue rather than the sender-receiver model we've mentioned before. Next is guiding, and this is about guiding towards new ways of seeing and being. Often, I've been arming and ahhing about explaining it in this way, but I'm going to explain it in this way, and hopefully if there's any kind of things that brings up for people and we want to talk about it more, let's do that. A big part of health professionals' ethical duty is to help people to come to terms with and manage their new identity as someone who is sick, someone who possibly disabled, possibly debilitated, or has a new outlook on life because they've had a near miss. All of these different experiences that people present with in healthcare contexts. It's a really ethical job that we have to do to help them to see and to be that new person. Sometimes that's a joyful experience. It's not always negative. Sometimes people come into wonderful growth and wonderful self-development through the experiences they have in health. And we can't just assume it's negative. Sometimes it's an arena for growth too. The next one, caring, I'm not going to spend any time on because I'm pretty sure we all know what that means. But a couple of principles here that we're going to just touch on is this notion that we're affirming and comforting at the same time. We're not contradicting the experience of others. We're caring about what they're experiencing. We're affirming them as people and their experience. And then we're offering that comfort and compassion to care for and with them in their journey. Last one, therapeutic. And again, hopefully this is fairly straightforward. We understand this. But I love this notion here that we're there to support a change in behavior and thought. We're not going to say that that's what you have to do, but we're there to support that as a possibility. I'm going to move swiftly on and leave us with this quotation here. And the second part, I think, is the key part, is that there are demands on the health professional to unite ethics and communication. And I think what person-centered communication, if anything you take away from this, is a realization of that and a practice of that, of making sure that you are enacting the ethics that you see as the positive way to make change in the world and to help people flourish and to become better people. That's what I'll end with. I don't want to take up any more time. I'm going to stop the sharing there. As I've mentioned, folks, questions, please, in the Q&A box, in the chat box. I have taken way too long. Apologies, Rita and Asma. But I'm going to hand straight over to 2 wonderful folks, Rita and Asma, who have both undertaken health action training. They are qualified HAT trainers, in fact, and you'll see them leading some activities in the second half of the session. I've invited them today because I really want the attendees here to hear the first-hand experience of what the health action training process is like, and in particular how they've used the training to apply the ideas and what they've learned about this topic of person-centered communication through the work they do. I'm going to stop talking about what they're going to talk about. I'm going to invite them to talk on their own behalf. And maybe should we hear, it's up to you two folks if you want to have a dialogue between you two, but maybe we'll hear from Rita first, and then we'll hear from Asma after, and possibly have a discussion. Over to you, Rita.
Thank you, Carl. This is really amazing. I'm so proud to be with you today. I am Rita IEA, a registered nurse from Lebanon, and currently I'm serving as nursing director in a private hospital. Today, I live and work in a war region. This comes with a huge daily challenges. There is constant threats, there is challenge with resources, lots of demands, dangerous environment. Also, we have a huge impact as psychological, and we are witnessing displaced families suffer trauma or. But despite all these challenges, we remain committed to provide a compassionate and quality care, to foster a supportive work environment also, and to prioritize mental health. What is our secret? Why we are still here? Well, fortunately, we are a member in Nursing Now Challenge, and this is allowing us to participate in HAD courses. Like those courses are tailored for us as nurses and health professionals. So we are coping with this crisis. We are having our well-being and growth, but especially we are having this communication based on person-centered care. Over the past 4 years, I've been participating virtually in all HEAD courses, and this has significantly enhanced my skills and confidence. One of the most surprising and rewarding parts of this journey of learning was discovering this huge and global community of other nurses who are having same challenges as me, but also and specifically who are having diverse culture. That was overwhelming, especially in the first session. I was between lots of faces, but I realized I have to be brave and embracing this new community that has allowed me to listen to other stories, to share my own story, but also to be supported by those team of head who are very professional. They allowed me to transfer my experience in a valuable learning moments through role playing, through drama, through forum theaters. And one of the more valuable was the communication part. This provides me at personal level with skills in effective communication, so I could be more stronger. I have more relationship as nursing director. This is very helpful to communicate with patients, with families, with other colleagues, and also to be sympathetically present and to understand what they are going through. I have learned to recognize my strengths, manage my emotions, but also to maintain realistic thinking, especially in high stress situations. For instance, to start my day, I always start with breathing exercises that I have learned through those courses of HAT. I've been nurse for 20 years, and I used to work in a patient-centered care approach. Through HAT, I learned and discovered the advantage of being through person-centered care. I have learned to treat the person as one with his own story, with his own values, characteristics, beliefs, culture, and unique life story. So I learned how to reassure the person, to listen, to observe, even to be present without talking, without sharing information. And the most important is that I am not alone in this journey. I have other colleagues from the hospital where I work that are joining those HEAD courses, and through Nursing Now, it is for free. So those nurses are enjoying the benefits. They are more sympathetically present for their patients. And also, we are acknowledging, we are responding to the patient's unique experience, physically and emotionally. So now, as nurses, we are stepping beyond the routine tasks that we are used to do, the routine procedures. We are connecting with the person. We are not judging the person. Beyond the compassion, we are cultivating a genuine concern about the patient's well-being, and also we have a shared decision making with the patient in the care plan. Throughout this collaborative learning, we have developed a new strategy in our facility, and we could convince our managers to adopt it. This has been particularly important because we have now effective communication as key to ensure that everyone feel valued and heard. The skills that we have gained in person-centered care have enabled us to advocate for the patients, for other colleagues, for displaced persons in time of war, and to ensure that the voices are heard. And also, we are creating safe places where we can connect, discuss. Monthly, we have like a repetition of the courses that we have learned in HAT, and we are sharing this with early career nurses who maybe have like a problem with the language barrier, because here we speak Arabic and French more than English, but we are translating this to our own language with our own styles. And in collaboration with the colleagues, we could like develop and implement the protocols of de-escalation and build the capacity to deal with the challenging situation, all based on evidence through HAT shared resources, as we have seen with Carl a few minutes ago. Also, I would love to share that with one of our team projects, Joy at Work, we have created this environment based on past years while we was listening to Dr. Maureen, Professor Maureen, who is with us today and we admire a lot. She was advocating for joyful nurses at work. And over the last years, we have learned through HAT we can go forward and instead of being just joy at work, being person-centered at work. And really, that was very helpful for us, building emotional immunization and heightening our self-awareness. So we are continuing to ask nurses what matters for them, but also we are in an approach as person-centered team. So we are promoting, encouraging colleagues to embrace daily challenge, to be more positive, and to accept but not to be under the pressure. And as I reflect on my journey, I'm grateful for this transformative learning that I had with HAT team, and also that had deepened my communication skills, but also my connection to my community. I'm proud to be part of this amazing and global network of nurses who are dedicated to making a difference in lives of others, even in face of dangers. Learning with HAT is a sustainable process. Over the 4 past years, I could graduate as trainer, so I can share the knowledge, the techniques with other nurses and midwives and healthcare workers. I encourage you, I deeply invite you all to seek out similar opportunities for growth and connection. Really go forward and be with HAT because really it's a life-changing game. And once again, thank you all. To you, Asma.
Thank you, Rita. Hi, everyone. I am Asma Soui. I am a consultant critical care nurse and advanced specialist in leadership and management. I work at the Ministry of Health in Jordan. I've been, let's say, in different roles in nursing through my career. I am a nurse for 17 years now, and I work as a nurse at the ICUs, at the patient floors, and then I moved for the nursing directorate at the Ministry of Health for 4 years. And now I am working at a training center for life support programs for the all staff of the Ministry of Health. And I'm very lucky that I had the chance to be a facilitator now with the health action training programs. It's been a lovely journey. I think it has been, we are in the 3rd year right now for me. So I started with the, let's say, basic courses like the graduate certificate course, which is I think is doing again now. It's continuously happening. So if anyone had the chance to participate in it, I will encourage him to do so. And then I had the chance to participate in other courses like coping with crisis and the communication. And then I had also the chance to do through training of the trainers and to practice being a co-facilitator at the beginning and then as a facilitator. And it's really, let's say, useful and enriching experiment that you can go through it. Let's say about my work or what did I use from this in my personal life or my work life. As you will see, and if you participated in such courses, you will find that this is useful not only for work, let's say as nurses or drama practitioners, if there, as I noticed, there's some drama practitioners here, but also in your personal life as a human being. Because when we are talking, as Carl said, about the person-centered care and the communication, person-centered communication, the main idea is to just look for the individual as a person, unique person. They have different feelings and different preferences and needs. And so you learn how to listen well for this and to acknowledge this and to respond to this thing, including yourself as individual. You have to recognize yourself as a person, and you have some different needs and preferences in some situations from your friends or your families or your colleagues at work. So you have to also recognize that and acknowledge it, so it won't be more pressure on you later on. One of the great things that you will learn in these courses is how to be more resilient at work. We all know that our healthcare work is stressful for different reasons. So how you can just stay there and go through this. As I said, I am for 17 years working. It was not easy, let's say, journey through the work. You have some stresses, difficult times. Sometimes you're just thinking of just maybe to leave the profession and go somewhere else, but you have to find some way to just manage and adapt. This thing you can learn through these self-action training techniques that you will learn. To focus on yourself, to just acknowledge yourself and recognize what to expect from yourself and what to expect from others. How do other actions affect you, and how is your actions affecting them? To be focused on your objectives, let's say, and so you behave and set your plans based on that. One of the things as well is the relaxing technique in some stressful situation and the centering exercises that helps you to just find yourself and know what do you want in this situation or in this life or in this problem, let's say. Another thing is that these techniques also, the drama techniques, let's say some of the drama techniques are very useful in helping you to solve problems, especially if you are talking about the health professions. We know that we are not dealing with machines or some just instruments. We are dealing with a human beings, so they are vulnerable people. And sometimes if you are not sure what to do, or if you just go with this plan or this plan, how it might work, so you can just go and try this on the patient. So one of the lovely techniques that you can use in the applied drama and the forum theater and so on is maybe trying this with colleagues in a real situation, but it's not on a patient. And maybe it's like everyone is trying to solve this problem. And at the end, you will find when you put yourself in this situation and others, if they suggest anything else to put themselves as well in this situation and try this out, you will find the solution for this problem without hurting anyone else. So I think this is the greatest thing in this and for health profession, because as I said, no harm. You just going to find the solution without doing any harm to anyone. Another thing that I would love to say that you can apply these techniques, let's say, in your work. For me, maybe if you are dealing with a patient, let's say if you are a nurse and dealing with a patient, one of the things that that you learn and you can apply is the sympathetic presence. You will learn just to see what behind the scene, as they say. So if the patients tell you that he's fine, maybe he's not fine. And as well, when we are talking about the person-centered care, you have to look for, as we said, about how the actions that the patient is giving or the responses he's doing, this is what really is he feeling or he wants or not. And that helps you in being there for that patient. Let me set examples to be more clear. So if you got two patients in the same accident, one with his hand cut off and one with just a broken fingers. The thing that you will get, or let's say expect, that maybe the one with the broken fingers is feeling much better and lucky from the one who get his hand cut off. Maybe you will be surprised if you just went there to let's say provide their emotional support, that you will find that the one with the broken fingers is more devastating and is more sad than the one with the hands cut off, for different reasons. As we said, this is a uniqueness of the human being. Maybe he has other problems, and this is just the breaking point for him. Maybe it's his life. If he is a pianist playing, maybe so there's no work anymore, no hobby anymore. And it depends from person to person. So you don't have to set expectations. You just read what is there from the patient who is in front of you. And if you are talking about the patient, if you are talking about yourself, as I said, it's about the resilience, about setting your goals, knowing yourself. And sometimes also it's about understanding your colleagues and how to set the, let's say, shared goals with your colleagues, understand their behaviors, their actions, and their objectives. And as well as one of the things that I get used when I was at the directorate is that how to, let's say, communicate with your superiors, maybe your boss at work. So if you understand the way he thinks and the goals he had, the objectives he had, and if you understand what is behind his actions and let's say the nonverbal communications he's doing, that helps you a lot to just find a way to go through the conversation and do what you want at work. And this one that I had, I really get benefit from dealing with my difficult, let's say one of my difficult superiors. So it helped me through this. And another thing that helped me a lot as well, and I use these techniques when I work at the training center. So in training, I had to just apply some of these techniques. I usually, our training is based on life-saving programs. So as I said, it's you can't just bring a patient in a critical care or in a CPR and start training on them. So we use these techniques, let's say, when training the staff on doing the care that they need to be there. And when we are teaching as well and training the instructors and the trainers. So how to train the trainers, you can use these techniques, that it's very helpful to use that to train them. So and as well as we train sometimes in leadership, we train the nursing let's say the nursing department seniors and the directors at the hospitals and healthcare directorates. So it helps you as well in the leadership, let's say training, leadership communication. So from my side, let's say, and for me, I used it on a different levels and at different rules, and it was really, really, as I said, enriching experience. That's why I am inviting all of you, if you have the chance, and I had the chance at the beginning from the nursing now to participate in the first course, and so I am continuing so. And as maybe you know all that there is also becoming courses. So I invite you all to participate in it. And maybe sometimes you will, maybe let's say in 1 year or 2 years, you will be here telling us your journey and how you use these courses in your life, personal life, work life, whatever, where you can apply it. You just can take it and just use it there. So thank you all. That's it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Asma, and thank you, Rita. Really amazing to hear firsthand what the experiences are on the courses and what the learning in the courses has kind of led you both towards in different ways. I'm always blown away by both of you all the time. I admire you both very much. I hope you both know that. I'm aware we're a little bit behind time, but that's totally fine. We're nice and relaxed here. We don't mind overrunning a little bit. But I am going to move through quickly, and I encourage everybody, if we've got any questions, please do use the Q&A function. You can ask a question in the chat box if you're not sure how the Q&A function works, and our wonderful support person, Maysoon, will, I'm sure, help out with that and make sure we've got questions noted. And as Asma says, We do have courses coming up. There is always opportunities over the next 3 years for people to take part in health action training in some way, shape, or form through the Nursing Now Challenge, through Cavell. We heard from Libby that we've got some really exciting programs um, with Cavell coming up. So keep an eye out for those. If you have friends in the UK and the NHS in particular, colleagues, friends, point us towards those or point them towards us. It'd be great to kind of build that network as well with Cavell and what we do. Um, right, I am really excited because we've got to the point where we have our special invited guest here to talk. And I'm really, really happy to hand over to Maureen. And I'm not going to even introduce on your behalf, Maureen. I'd love to hand straight over to you. And I'm excited for the next 20 minutes.
Well, thank you so much. I'm just trying to share my slides, but I am delighted to be with you all this morning. I feel like I'm in very very good company. It feels like we're all on the same page here. And let me see if I can find my slides here. Okay. Can you see those okay, Carl?
Yes, I can see them.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all. And I first want to start by saying, Pat, I beat you because I've been a registered nurse now for 52 years. I probably could add up all my years and still beat you all. But first of all, I wanted to particularly focus on this lesson that I took from working on Native American reservations, on Indian reservations across the United States. And years ago, they asked me to get up and give a plenary talk, and there were so many people in the audience, and I got up and they asked me to start with an introduction. So I said, I'm Maureen Bisognano. I'm the president of the Institute for Healthcare Improvement. And I started, and one of the guys in the front row stood up and he said, please stop. He said, we want to get to know you, not your, and the way we introduce ourselves on Native American reservations is like this. So he made me sit down and think, and then I came back up and I said, okay, Maureen Bisognano, I play golf every Saturday morning at 7:09. Not too well, but I enjoy it. I get to walk and have a great time with my family. I have been married to my husband now for 22 years. We got married in Machu Picchu in Peru in Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish, but it was an amazing adventure. I have my first dog of my life, little Eva, who's sitting down here by my feet. And I'm a grandmother for the first time. And I have the cutest little grandson, Jack, and another granddaughter on the way. When that's how they introduce themselves on Native American reservations, that's who you are. And so as I've been sharing this example with people around the world, they find that when they start a meeting, as an example, this way, as opposed to everybody going around the table and talking about their professional credentials, the conversation totally changes. Like people will come up and say, what's your golf handicap? Or what kind of a dog do you have? Or, you know, it gets to know people in a completely different way. So I would encourage you to try that at your next meeting. Just start by introducing yourself that way and see what happens. Experiences are really amazing. And I'll share a lesson from my mother about this. My mother, I'm one of 9 kids. I'm the oldest of 9 kids. My mother was a newborn nursery nurse and an amazing mother. And here we were at her birthday, celebrating her birthday. About a week after I took this picture, my mother had a stroke. She lived with me, and I found her unconscious and brought her to the hospital. And she was in intensive care for about a week. And at the end, she was never regained consciousness. But at the end of that week, a doctor called us and said, we want to have a family meeting, which you can imagine with all these kids and everybody. It was a huge meeting. But we got into our conference room, and that doctor and her nurse sat with us. And the doctor said, tell me about your mother. And I said, she's 78 years old. She's got diabetes. She's had bilateral knee replacements. I'm the only one in healthcare, and the oldest. So I jumped in. And the doctor put up his hand and he said, no, 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 tell me about your mother. And I have this one brother who's always a troublemaker. And he said, I'll tell you about my mother. She loved me best. She used to call me every day and tell me she loved me best. And we all started laughing. And for an hour, we told stories about my mother, laughing, crying, laughing, crying. And at the end of the hour, the doctor said, if your mother was able to be here in this room and hear all these wonderful stories, I'm sure she'd smile. What would she say about her future? And we had a conversation. And right at that point, another doctor walked in, her ICU doctor, and he stood up over the big group and he said, your mother is intubated. I'm going to need to put a trach in her neck, and she's never going to breathe on her own again. She's going to need a machine to breathe for her. She will never eat again, so I need to put a feeding tube in. I can have no idea how you're ever going to find a nursing home that's going to be able to take care of somebody who's intubated with a feeding tube. And then he looked at his watch and he said, I need to get back to work. And my brother, the trouble one, said, oh, because my mother's dying, she's not your work. And when he walked out of the room, I said, this is the problem with some of our parts of our healthcare system. I have on the one hand, the doctor for her body, and the other, the doctor for her soul. And how do we not all learn the lessons that you're learning today about how do we really create person-centered communication and patient-centered care? I learned so much from that encounter, but we did take my mother home, and she had the most peaceful last week of her life at our home before she died. While I was still in the hospital, though, the CEO of the hospital, who was a friend, came and he said, is there anything I can do for your mother? And I said, no, unfortunately, there isn't. And he said, is there anything I can do for you? And I said, yes, you can eliminate visiting hours. You can stop trying to separate me from my mother when it's her last days of life. And he said, we don't have visiting hours. And I said, oh, yes, you do have visiting hours. And I brought him up to the ICU. And this was the door, big stop signs. It was locked, and 24 hours a day, you had to call in to ask permission to be with your loved one. The nurses would put paper over the window so you couldn't even see in. And being a quality improvement nerd, I used to track how many times that I'd call in, or we would call in and they would say, yes, you can come in. And it was about 10% of the time. Pick up the phone on the wall, wait for someone to answer, stop. It was just so appalling. 1 week later, this was the door. And that CEO and many of the nurses said that they had never seen the door in the same way until I called it out to them. So what I would encourage you to do is not only think about person-centered conversation as communication, but also looking. And I think when you start to look through different lenses, we'll see a different way for us to begin to change the culture of healthcare. I know some of you have heard me say that about 10 years ago, I was flying to the Paris Forum, and on the plane, I was reviewing my plenary, and I read this article, and in the article, there was this one sentence that said, we can't only ask what's the matter, we have to ask what matters to you. So on the plane, I ripped up my talk and rewrote it. And I said, when you get back to work, I want you not only to ask the patient what's the matter, but what matters to you. And a week later, I got a text from Jen Rogers, a pediatric nurse in Scotland. And she shared the most amazing story about asking that question to the next patient that she saw, how that patient was Kendra, a young girl with autism who had never spoken. But the conversation that Kendra had with her by writing stories on a sheet of construction paper and putting it on her door changed everything about the care for that patient. And then I got a text from Anders Verge in Norway, and he had gone back and really created a movement in Norway. I went to visit him, and in most places they have the whiteboard that has the patient's name, their age, their doctor, and their resuscitation status, and then anything else. But Anders changed it to have the picture of the person, what they like to be called, what matters most, and then all the other stuff. So I stood there and I said, Anders, tell me about this guy. And he said, he's 88 and he wants 2 scotches every night at 5 p.m. And I smiled and I said, tell me about this lady. And in capital letters, it said, never take me out of my room without my makeup on and my hair done. And I smiled. I felt like I knew these people in a way, totally because Anders had created this new way to look at people and what mattered to them. And then in the Royal Free, I got in London, I got texts from Karen Turner, who she said also, let's ask the staff what matters to them, and use the improvement cycles and the what matters to you, the joy in work, and really began to create a new way to ask staff what matters most. It changed so many things. I was in a hospital recently and I met with a young environmental services worker, and he was telling me of an experience that he had. He said that a week before I met with him, he had been called to human resources and told he was fired. And he said, why am I being fired? And they said, you call in sick too much. And so he went down to clean out his locker. And when he opened his locker and started to clean it out, he started to cry. And one of the other environmental services workers said, what's the matter? Why are you crying? And he said, I've been fired. And she said, why? And he said, I've been calling in sick too much. And she said, why? And then she had heard people around the hospital say, what matters to you? So she said, what matters to you? And he said, I'm going through a very difficult divorce. And if I don't go to court to fight for the custody of my 5-year-old son, I'll lose him. And he's what matters to me. And then she and he both began to cry. And then she said, wait a minute. And she put up a piece of construction paper on the wall. And she said, what matters to you? And then here are the days you're supposed to go to court. And then she gathered all of the housekeeping people together. And she said, what matters to you? What matters to you? And they started filling in what mattered to them. They created a schedule on the wall. And they went to the administration and said, we absolutely guarantee you we will cover every shift. We absolutely guarantee you we won't be spending any more money, but we are going to create joy in work by working by what matters to the staff. And it totally changed the culture. That began to spread all through the hospital because people started to see that in this time of stress for the workforce, if we don't understand and have conversations with them about what matters, we're going to lose the workforce, and that means we're going to have poor quality care. So we started a movement. The movement is now in over 50 countries, the What Matters to You movement. We have a phone call every month, and people are doing research on the impact of that. On my last slide up here, you can go to this link, WMTY, whatmatterstoyou.world, and sign up for the calls if you like. They're really encouraging and bring so much joy to people because we're changing the culture of healthcare. And I don't know if you've read this book, Compassionomics, by 2 physicians here in the US, but what they're finding is that people, when they first start to talk about compassion, they say, well, I don't have time for that. I'm too busy for that. But when they start to really ask people, tell me about what matters, tell me about what's happening with you, they're finding that basic acts of kindness can lead to faster wound healing. They actually did a study where anesthesiologists came out of the operating room and met the patients that they were going to care for before they got wheeled in. And the simple act of coming out and putting his or her hand on the patient's arm and saying, my name's Maureen, I'm going to be your anesthesiologist today. I'll be with you the whole time. I'll make sure you have no pain. You're perfectly comfortable, and I'll bring you back to this room afterward. That 40 seconds of kindness actually led to reduced need for anesthesia in the operating room, decreased pain medication post-op, faster wound healing, and shorter hospital stays. Everybody wins with 40 seconds of compassion and kindness. And one of our IHI senior fellows has been doing a lot of work on this and really understanding what we're talking about here today, which what is the impact of some basic acts of kindness and how can they make a difference in the way that we provide care. A few years ago, some of you may know Bob Klaber, a pediatrician in London, and he and I were doing a talk at one of the forums on kindness in healthcare. And we had so much fun in planning the session that when we did the session finally, it was virtually because it was during COVID. We said, we've been meeting once a month to plan this session. And we're having so much fun that we're never going to stop meeting. And so we're going to have a meeting once a month on the call. You're welcome to join. The next day was the next kindness in healthcare call, and we had 63 people join from that session. In the bottom left of this slide is the link to that. And again, both of these calls, What Matters to You in Kindness in Healthcare, bring people together from all over the world with examples of research and ideas that are making healthcare better, I think. And so I'll talk a little bit about listening and how there are some ways I think that, especially in healthcare, we can start to create person-centered communication by really focusing on how do we listen. And listening with curiosity, I think, can really help us to change things. You've all, Rita and Alma, talked about how you've learned some of these skills in the health action training work, and I think it's critical. Just as you were saying, Carl, I used to think empathy was really important. Empathy is when you see that someone else has pain and you feel that pain. And I've learned that physiologically that triggers a part of your brain that makes you feel bad because you see someone in pain. But when you do something, when you act with kindness, when you do something, it triggers a different part of your brain that makes you feel good. So when, as an example, COVID hit, I pulled out my Christmas card list. I'm Irish, so I have 250 Christmas cards that I send out. And I made a list of all the people on my Christmas card list that lived alone. I knew they were isolated and they were living alone. And so I made a list of them and I called it my reach list. And since COVID started, every single day since then, I have reached out to at least one person on that list. I send them a text, or I send them a card, or I call them, or I meet with them. But every single day, I reach out to someone who lives alone. And I can't tell you what a difference it's made to them, but it's made a huge difference to me. When you feel like you're, wanting to be helpful, but you can't, a reach list or something like that can make a huge difference, I think, for them and for you. So I would suggest that you every day work on your IQ, your EQ, and your CQ. Work on your IQ, read an article, take a course online, join in something like the training that you're in today. Work on your EQ, really figure out how can you connect more closely with the emotions that people are going through. And work on your CQ, your curiosity quotient. Everywhere you go, like my little pet, my little dog had a urinary tract infection, and we had to bring her to the hospital, and it was right at the end of COVID, and she was admitted, so we couldn't be with her and we couldn't visit her, and it was really painful. And every 12 hours, the vet would send a picture of our dog to my husband's phone and my phone. And it said, Eva's eating, Eva's not in pain anymore. It probably took 30 seconds to take a picture and send us that text, but it meant such a huge difference to us. I learned more from the vet about curiosity and empathy that I've learned from healthcare. So you can do the same. Really just figure out how you can be bringing ideas from other industries into healthcare. Learn by seeing. Walk with a patient, spend time with staff, and you'll see what a shift assignment looks like or how much pain people are working in. And then I think active listening, as we've been talking about here, not just sitting there and listening and then responding with what you had already planned, but really seeing anew and being open-minded can make a huge difference. I love these skills of illumination that I read from David Brooks in the New York Times. He said the gift of attention is attending to people in a warm way, and accompaniment, the other-centered way of being with people during normal routines of life, taking our time and simply being present, I think makes all the difference in the world, being present. And then the art of conversation. I love loud listening. What that means, if you haven't heard that term, is that you don't just sit there and listen while someone talks, but you're leaning in and you're saying, yes, yes, I know that. You're being loud and you're responding with them as you're communicating. Storify whenever possible. People will remember my mother's story if they don't remember anything else about this presentation. But the more you can relate to a story, the more I think important. Do the looping. So when I heard you say this, that made me think of this. And you're always looping so that you're bringing the conversation together. Turn to narrative, and don't be a topper. Don't be the person that says, oh yeah, well, I had a worse time with this, you know. You've had those people that you start to tell a story and then all of a sudden you hear, well, you think that was bad, you know. So I think it's really doing the other thing, storifying and looping and loud listening. I love that thought. And I think this might be helpful as well, that listening at the first level is just downloading. All you're doing is hearing what people are saying, and it's reconfirming typically your old opinions and judgments. But factual listening is when you open your mind and you might find new data that disconfirms what you had been thinking. You're really open to noticing differences. Listening 3 is empathic listening with your open heart. And that's seeing through another person's eyes, and you're connecting emotionally. And then generative listening, open will, you want the future to emerge, is connecting to an emerging future whole and shifting in your identity. You're really learning from the conversation. And I think that makes a huge difference. So the next time you're listening, just think, am I listening 1, 2, 3, or 4? And how can I practice moving from 1 to 4? If we're going to co-produce health with patients, we've got to learn to communicate and listen and respect and design not only health, but care with them. Paul Batalden and his daughter Maren, the first 2 authors on this article. Paul is one of the founders of IHI, and he's one of the most amazing leaders, a pediatrician and a quality improvement leader. But he has really flipped the balance of power in healthcare by saying, we can't design healthcare in a room and then deliver it to people. We need to work with them to co-produce design and health. And so I'll wrap up by saying that I love these essential skills for being human, and only 30% of the people in the world are good question askers. So as we're thinking about person-centered communication, you might take a look down this list and just say, how can I practice working on these? How can I think about moving from level 1 listening to level 4? How can I really host a gathering where everyone feels embraced? Bringing people together, I think, is such a critical way to really start to listen without making judgments, and really understand where a person's coming from, because I think that is critical to person-centered communication. Micro affirmations. Everybody talks about microaggressions and how angry you feel from that, but practice micro affirmations, words, gestures. When you're talking to someone, lean in, look into their eyes, give them a hug. I'm a huge hugger. Timely responsiveness and respectful silence, so that we're really listening. And I'm hoping, Carl, that you can share a very brief video. I wanted to tell you that the doctor in this video is the doctor for my mother's soul. So when you watch this, you'll understand why I love him so much. You want me to stop sharing or have you? Okay, great. The doctor in this video that we're going to show you is the doctor for my mother's soul. He's the one that called us together and said, "Tell me about your mother." Okay. You're on mute, Carl. I don't know if that stops the sound. Oh, here we go.
I think we're good to go here. Let's
Go.
go.
Doctors and hospitals really aren't what we call conversation ready, because we ourselves have so medicalized everything that I'm seeing for this patient. What's the dose of this medicine? What's the chemotherapy or not? With this test or not? That we ourselves don't actually often have the experience, the practice, the support that we need.
Sorry.
Doctors and hospitals really aren't what we call conversation ready, because we ourselves have so medicalized everything that I'm seeing for this patient. What's the dose of this medicine? What's the chemotherapy or not? With this test or not? That we ourselves don't actually often have the experience, the practice, the support that we need to sit down with the patient as a human being, understand what's important to them as a human being, and make sure that that's always at the center of every medical plan. I was asked to see Thelma Botello. All that I knew was she was a 92-year-old woman who had severe vascular circulation problems in her leg, causing her lots of problems, for which there wasn't going to be any effective treatment that they could offer except amputation, which she just refused. She wasn't going to have that done. And so they said she didn't have that long to live, and so they wanted me to come by and maybe talk to her about hospice kind of options.
What I remember, I guess, most strikingly was that Dr. Farrow asked her, what would be a good day for you?
And so I sat down on the bed. I said, getting to know you some as a person will help me figure out how I can best help you.
And it's such a simple question. What would be a good day for you? What do you like to do? These things that I don't feel like I have time, honestly, on a daily basis when I'm seeing patients, when I'm on call, to ask these little things.
In whatever time there is ahead for you, how can we make that as good as it possibly can be for you? Singing is what made it a good day.
But it didn't take that long to find out that this is what was important to her.
I said, when was the last time that you sang? And she just sort of said, I haven't sung in a long time. I don't sing anymore. I said, why not? And she kind of looked at me and I said, how about singing me a song?
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you. And I say to myself, what do you say, darling? What a wonderful world. Somebody, where's the drummer?
I see skies of blue.
I see skies of blue.
Clouds of white.
Clouds of white.
The bright, blessed
The bright, blessed sun. And the dark, sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Pop, 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 pop. Oh, yeah.
And it made such a huge difference in her day.
The music was right there as vividly as it had ever been. And every time her voice started to sing, you could just see her eyes getting younger, her face getting younger, and a kind of human joy returning.
Thanks, Carl, for sharing that. So when you think about it, the nurses and the doctors were talking about Thelma Botello. She was a world-class jazz singer. Dolly Baker was her jazz name, and she used to sing all over the world. She was like hugely famous. She was telling us that she actually had a fight with her husband because he had an affair with Marilyn Monroe. That was that was who she was. And yet, before Lachlan Farrow asked her that question, she was a 92-year-old lady with leg ulcers. And the difference between the way we look at somebody medically and the way we look at them when we use person-centered communication is completely different. And so I'm very excited about the work that you're doing, because I feel like together we can change the culture of healthcare. We can flip the balance of power. We can co-produce health and care. And I'm really grateful to all of you for what you're doing. So I'll just end there, and Carl, see if we have time for questions or whatever you want.
Absolutely. Thank you, Maureen. I'm going to give you a round of applause in the emojis there for what that's worth. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'm just going to pop your spotlight off there. And yes, we definitely do have some time for questions and answers before we move on to the activities part of the session. So folks, if you have any questions, now's the time. Chat box function is there for you. The Q&A function is there for you. Whilst you think of some questions, I have one for everybody on the panel to ponder, as it's possibly the thing that comes up the most when I talk to people about are you being person-centered in your communication? What can you be doing? Why is it not happening? What are the things? Time. Time is the biggest factor. So open kind of topic and thought of a question here is, what's your experience of person-centered communication and time, and how we make time for it, whether there is time for it? Maybe you've got some tips or principles for kind of doing that. Open question, anybody on that panel?
Well, one quick comment is just the 40 seconds that it takes for the anesthesiologist to come out. I think when we first started, the anesthesiologist would say, I don't have time. They actually did say, I don't have time. But when we figured it's 40 seconds, that makes such a huge difference in the amount of anesthesia you use, all of a sudden that gave them a license to try.
Anyone else? Rita, Asma, Pat?
Thank you, Carl. I would love to add that in our hospital, when we started with our Joy at Work and then person-centered care team, it was like nurses telling us, we don't have time. And a simple answer was, we are not asking for extra time. We are asking to change the way you are using the time, this precious time of the nurse near the patient, just to change it. Yes, this needs a lot of learning, a lot of willing, a lot of this is our new lifestyle, and this is really impactful. So this is the time, not an extra time.
That's so important, isn't it? Because it's that often I've come across that is that notion that it's an addition, that it's an extra, and it's like that cozy little extra thing we can do. No, I think that's right, Rita. Like making it fundamental to what we do, a core part of our practice, that helps. Pat, so you unmuted there.
Yeah, I think as well, it's important to appreciate that documentation can be a distraction. There's a famous sort of role play that Matt Jennings and I used to do, and it involved the nursing student taking the role of the patient, and another taking the role of a family member, and then the third person was the nurse. And of course, he or she had a piece of paper and began the interaction, actually sort of asking name, introduce herself. She went through the protocol, very good. And it took a long time, but when we asked the patient, the person doing the patient, what is the nurse doing? And the answer was, she is ignoring me. So this is the power of the action. So it's really, in that first 10 seconds, even, and the first 15 seconds, you must engage, you must rapidly create that rapport. And it's a natural skill that people that are in healthcare have, I think. They just need to be paying attention to themselves, but paying attention to the other person. And that 15 seconds, 40 seconds, or whatever that Maureen's talking about, you will gain so much information. that you can then go off and do your documentation. And that can be a later thing, but you will gain so much. And at that point, you're listening as well. You're listening well. So you're actually, that's back to the listening, the point of listening. And if you wanted to, you can assess the breathing. You can actually determine how someone is breathing, and that will tell you how they're feeling, but it will also tell you how the respiratory system's working. So you can do many things at the one time.
Thanks, Pat. I just want to address folks. You might be seeing other people joining the panel. That's on purpose. Don't panic. It's that things haven't gone awry. As we know, the second part of this session, we're going to be doing activities. So you'll see invitations from Maysoon, our capable helper today, to invite you to the panel. That's an invitation to join us on the panel so that when we do the activities, you can take part in the activities. If you prefer to sit and watch and maybe do the activities to yourself, as many as you can, you're more than welcome to do that. But don't be surprised if you see an invitation from Maysoon to join the main panel. Any other questions here? I'm seeing there's a couple of nice long chat messages in the chat box there. I can't see questions associated with that, so I'm going to ask the second question I had. This is more specifically for Maureen, but there's things to add. Asma, is there anything you want to mention about time and the notion that time can be a constraint for person-centeredness before we move on? Sorry, I realised you didn't get a chance to respond.
Just want to add, Carl, that the time is already spent there. It's not added time. So you are talking, you are listening to the patient, you are doing what we are doing. The thing here that the way you think and the way you are doing it, the objectives that you are doing it for is different. So it's the same time. Maybe if you did it right, you will take less time as well. So there's no added time. You are already taking that time for something else, but you have to do it effectively.
Really good point there. It might lead to time savings down the road, from a brass tacks point of view. A question I have specifically for Maureen that might bleed into further discussion. I was really struck by that notion of when you meet a Native American tribe, they ask you, who are you and what makes you you, that kind of question, and that they're looking for the information about you. They're not trying to find out your accolades, what you've achieved in your life and so on and so forth. It really made me think, and it's not just nursing that does this, but I think there's something in nursing that does this more or differently to some other professions, is that it becomes a point where, as a nurse, as a practitioner, you make that your identity. So your profession and your practice, and that becomes who you are. So do you think there's maybe something facing, or the difficulty facing nursing as a profession is for people to see them as a person as important in that, and that the nursing identity includes who they are? So that there's not one way of being a nurse. We don't need to idolize Florence Nightingale or whoever we idolize, Edith Cavell we heard about earlier today, and aspire to be that nurse. We should just be the nurse we are as a person. I don't know if that makes any sense, Maureen. Maybe you can.
Oh yeah, it definitely does. And I really love your question or your point, because I think it really brings us back to looking at the whole person, and us as well, just as we're thinking about introducing ourselves. I think people do have impressions of nurses in the United States. As an example, nursing is the most trusted profession. It has been for many, many years. But I think a lot of that comes from the communication and the relationships that we build up. But if we think of introducing ourselves as the nurse, or, it does create a kind of a way to think about the nurse or the patient. And I think that the communication that we're talking about, person-centered communication, is really what brings us together. There was a story recently in the United States where there was an elderly man in one of the academic medical centers. He was in for chemotherapy for 3 weeks. So in the United States, that would be one of the most expensive hospitalizations you could have, 3 weeks on chemotherapy. And then he was discharged, which I hate that word. I want to eliminate it from the language. There's no good uses of it, but he was discharged to home, and he got home and he called the emergency number because he was living alone and he had no food. And the person who answered the phone had been homeless once in her life. So she said, when I get off my shift, I'll bring you food. And she went with an EMT, an emergency medical person, and they went, and here's this little frail guy sitting with his walker. And he said, I have no family, I have no friends, I have no food. How can we think that taking care of somebody with chemotherapy and then discharging them with no food is caring? It's not. It means that we need to eliminate I'm a nurse, and sit down and say, what's it going to be like when you get home? What are you going to have for dinner? Who's going to bring you your meds? It's those conversations that are going to change the way that we care with people and not just discharge them from the hospital.
Oh, here. Yeah, we're not just here to fix them and send them on their way. I mean, nursing, the root word of the root etymology of the term nursing is to nourish. We nurse a newborn baby. Well, I say we humans, mammals nurse newborn babies, and it's the same. Nursing is nourishing. It's helping people to lead better lives in any way that is. We've got a question in the chat box here, unless any of the panelists want to respond to that question just a second ago. I think Maureen's nailed it personally, but anything to share, Pat, Asma, or Rita, on that idea? Going once, going twice. Sold. We'll move on to Kat's question here. Really good question in the Q&A box. How do we present the quotation marks, I love this, business case of person-centered practice? Any real-world examples to share? And she adds in a further comment, our exec boards may not be on the same bus as us in the journey. They might still be waiting for the bus. Pat, I'm actually going to ask you to respond to that first, and then we'll open up. What do you think to that, Pat? How do we present a business case to exec members on person-centeredness?
And better communication improves efficiency for starters, better teamwork, and will also mean that you'll more likely spot an issue quicker. So you'll actually, your complaints could drop away. So all these are savings. And then I really think it's sometimes hard to cost, really, is actually that warm feeling people have after a service, after they've had some type of a service from medical or nursing or healthcare professionals. They actually feel a sense of almost like loyalty to them, that they have a pride and that comes from having a very good, human to human relationship. That people feel proud that they've actually been cared for in a place. Like we had a thing. It's Maureen probably could advise me on this, but magnet hospitals existed, as a concept, and people kept. It's not that they deliberately return to seek out healthcare, but it's like being to a good restaurant, there's a pride in being associated with that restaurant. There's a pride in being associated and having almost part of I was cared for at the Royal Victoria Hospital. I was cared for at the Western Trust. There's a sense of pride. And that only comes from good relationships and real you can put a modern word on it, like co-production or whatever, but really it's so you've customers returning. If you want to use a business model, you've customers returning and talking about their experiences. So there's lots of savings. There's lots of the flip side of it is that there's lots of spending unnecessarily because people don't communicate properly, and they're not taking time to listen well. So
thanks, Pat. Anyone else on the panel to respond before we hear from CJ?
I just say absolutely. It was we're not only seeing improved patient experience, which matters a lot, but we're seeing staff reductions in turnover. We're seeing actually decreases in complications, patient complications, improved safety, improved communications, improved safety, and length of stay. And there's the wonderful bottom line savings when you can look through that lens.
Asma, I think you were going to say as well. Thank you, Maureen.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe if we can use the let's say the satisfaction, the maybe the customer and the staff satisfaction, one of the greatest thing that you can set as an example. And as you all say that the Magnet Hospitals is there for a reason, the person-centered care, as Professor Maureen also said, is about also the staff. We had a lot of hospitals here, let's say private hospitals, that the staff there, let's say the most experienced staff is only there for 2 years just to get the experience to go and work other places. So they have a high range of turnover, right? So while other hospitals, the staff is there forever, even if they are hired in the governmentals or have their names hired in a governmental hospitals, they just won't go because when they ask them why, they said because they have some, let's say, professional development plan for us. They have, let's say, monthly meeting that they ask them how they feel and what they are doing and what they want. Is there anything they want to change? So they felt that there's someone who's caring for them while they are caring for all the patients that they're in the hospital. So the satisfaction is very, let's say, great indicator and good one to say.
Absolutely. Thank you, Asma. And I put into the chat when Pat was saying, the center of the person-centered nursing framework, the very center of it is a good care experience. And I mean, how do you build a business case for that you can create good care experiences for everyone? And what I really like about the terminology of a good experience means that, the outcome doesn't have to be good. I mean, we can't save everybody's lives. It's impossible. Things will happen. But if you can have a good experience, even if things go wrong, I mean, that makes such a difference. I think there's some, and I'm quoting research that I don't have to hand and everything like that, but there's research there that if a doctor makes a mistake, a surgeon makes a mistake, something like 80 to 90% of those complaints are dropped about the mistake if the person actually apologizes, which kind of implies to me that there's many people who don't bother apologizing. You think surely that's the first step of recognition that something's gone wrong and you personally apologize to the person. So I notice here we've got the wonderful Claire Jowett's got a hand up, has joined our panel. Claire.
Hi, Carl. Yeah, I think there's loads to be unpicked here. I think that one of the things that we really need to be doing is encouraging nurses to think positively about their role. I work with nurses who are coming back to practice, who have been out of practice, and who are coming back on a sort of return to practice course. And what's really key for them is confidence, and it comes through having been away and being really worried about the environment they're going into and finding that it's an aggressive environment. And they haven't been away that long. But what's led to that thinking is reflecting on how they were treated whilst they were in clinical practice. And I think very often when you're in it, you don't necessarily notice it. And I hear student nurses all the time and, newly qualified nurses saying, I'm just a nurse. Can we just drop the just? We are nurses. Let's hold that and hold it tight and be proud of that. Let's really focus on the skills and the qualities that we have as nurses and really embed that in our training as well. And I think it comes down to reflective practice as well, really embedding reflective practice. Let's ensure that people are reflecting on what it is that they're doing right, because we're so good at identifying what we're not doing right. Let's hold the best practice. Let's identify that best practice. Let's share that best practice, and let's shout about it, because we're not good at doing that. And we do kind of scuttle off and kind of go, oh, we're just a nurse. Hold that position firm, hold it high, and hold kindness at the heart of it. I mean, I think that kindness and care needs to be integrated right through training from the very earliest stage. This is not an optional add-on. And if you can't demonstrate kindness and care at the earliest stages of training, then I think that maybe nursing isn't the profession for you. There are other healthcare professions that perhaps you need it less. I'm not saying you don't need it, but you need it perhaps less. But to be on the interface with patients and carers and families, you're treading on people's lives, and you need to tread so gently because you're leaving footprints on them. So I just think that we need to, we really, there's so much there, isn't there? But yeah, really, really pleased to be part of this.
Thank you, Claire, and we're pleased you're here, part of it with us. Maybe I'll just mention a couple more things then in response to what Kat's mentioned there. How do we build a business case for this? I mean, for one thing, person-centered practice is adopted by the WHO. It's been adopted in probably 60 or so countries as part of that kind of Department of Health, Ministry of Health level policy. It's growing in its reach in terms of policy. And what we often find is that people say they're doing it, they're talking it, but they're not walking that walk of what person-centered practice actually is. So that's probably a bit more of a separate issue, but it's an important one to note that just because someone said, I'm being person-centered, does not mean you necessarily are. In terms of building a business case for it, for us, when you're talking to executives, when you're talking to people at a certain level, we have to know what language they speak at. Let's think in a person-centered way. Who are these people? What are they trying to achieve? Why are they doing the things they do? Because from an external viewpoint, you might think these people don't care. These people are just doing X, Y, and Z. They're cutting these services. They're doing X, Y, and Z. They're whatever they're doing, or dismissing your ideas, so on and so forth. But if we think, what is it they want to achieve? What is it they want to achieve in their role, in their professional practice, and also the personal life as well? How can we help them to see that incorporating person-centeredness helps them achieve what they want to achieve? So that's probably a little bit of a kind of cop-out answer, but I think it's important we know who we're talking to and what they want.
Cal, can I add? I developed a way to do exactly what you're saying some time ago, and that is really when you look out at an audience, and some of them are executives, some are clinicians, some are housekeepers, it's you have to learn how to speak in different languages. I call it being multilingual. And so I'll often start with a story, and you can tell who you're getting to, the people who you've touched their hearts. But at the end of that, I'll extrapolate and say, it's not just my mother. There are this many other people who are in this certain situation. So story, extrapolation, then the human cost. What the experience is like, how many infections somebody got in a year, or because they have a catheter in, or whatever it is, and then the financial cost. So that arc of story, extrapolation, human cost, financial cost, if you use that when you're communicating, typically you can get to everybody in the audience.
That's so useful. I think we're going to close with that brilliant tip there of story at first, bring in the human cost, then financial cost. Really, three really great clear steps to kind of promote any kind of ideal or value that you want to promote. So folks, this is drawing to an end the presentation part of our webinar, and this is all an experiment. So bearing with us is great. This is about 2 hours in for the session, and we're now going to try to move towards the activity part. So I'm going to ask if there's anybody who's received an invite to join the panel and they'd like to join the panel, please do join the panel. I'm going to offer the panelists a 5-minute break or so, comfort break to take 5 minutes to debrief and do whatever you need to do from the presentations and the questions. And we will, in 5 minutes, start the activities. I'm going to stay here and kind of coax and cajole people onto the panel, and Maysoon's going to send invitations too. But before we do, I just want to say a huge thank you to all the presenters for today. I know Libby's already gone as well. I know she had to go early, but I'm sure she can hear our thanks from afar. But thanks to Pat, thanks to Rita, thanks to Asma, and thanks to Maureen, and a round of applause for you all. And hopefully we'll get more people to join us here for the activities. But shall we take a 5-minute break, panelists? I'll still be here in the background, folks. So if you have any questions or thoughts, I'll be here to answer them, but let's take a 5-minute break. I'm going to pause the recording, folks. So we're back to recording the webinar proper, and you've not seen behind the scenes that we've managed to coax a few people from their attendeeship to join us on the panel, and that means we're going to start the activities in this session. And we talked a lot about person-centered practice and the importance of listening, being mindful, stuff like that. Something that we say as a bit of a motto with health action training is that you can't be person-centered without being a centered person. And that's why in pretty much all of our sessions, we spend some time doing some breathing and centering activities. And to demonstrate a couple of those activities, I'm going to ask Rita to share some activities. Over to you, Rita.
Thank you, Carl, and happy to see that we have lots of folks who are joining us for this part of activity. We are starting with some breathing exercises. So please feel comfortable on your seat. Have a comfortable seat. Feel your feet are on the floor. And the first exercise that you are starting with is nostril to nostril breathing. So relax your shoulder. Nostril to nostril breathing is a type of yoga breathing practice that may help you relax and lower your stress. It's an art of breath control. So this is a breathing practice that you can do whenever you want to feel comfortable, to calm your stress. Now you can feel free to watch me modeling this exercise of breathing, then we will do together. So we are focusing on practice of breathing through alternate nostril. First of all, with your right hand, with your right thumb, you are going to block your right nostril. You are going to breathe out through your left nostril and then breathe in. As you open your thumb, you are going to close your left nostril with the ring finger of your right hand, and you are going to breathe out and in again through your right nostril. Close the right nostril with your right thumb and repeat the cycle. So breathe out through your left nostril and in. Close with the ring finger your left nostril. Open your right nostril. Out and in. Make sure you breathe in smooth and continuously. Continue as your own pace. Take your time to breathe out. Breathe in. Close. Breathe out. You can close your eyes. Now you are going to do it on your pace, please. One more time. And now, as you are opening slowly your eyes, you are coming with us. I hope that was helpful to feel more comfortable. Of course, don't do it while you are driving. Just do it when you are in a quiet and peaceful place. And now we are going to the next breathing exercise that is coherent breathing. According to James Nestor, coherent breathing is the optimal breathing for physical and mental health. So you can do it as often as possible for as long as possible as you like. So this is in our modern life, could be a day practice that helps your mind to be more comfortable and to coordinate your body with your spirit. This is really a very simple exercise. You just have to breathe in for 6 seconds and out for 6 seconds in one continuous flow. And with Carl, we are going to model it. I'm going to count with my hand as we go in and out. Out. We are doing it one more time. So this is a very simple exercise. You can do it while closing your eyes, counting on your head. So while you are breathing out, you can feel the belly gently contract. You can put your hands on your belly. And while you are breathing in, you can feel your belly gently expand. Breathe out your body more and more as you breathe out. You are relaxing. Breathe in. You are allowing your body and your belly to expand. If you feel this is hard to follow our lead, you can do it on your peaceful flow as you want. So, while you are breathing in and out, you can relax your chest, relax your shoulder. You can lower your back. Breathe in, out. You can close your eyes to feel more comfortable. Whatever a memory or image that passed by your mind, just let it pass by like it's a cloud floating in the sky. Breathe in, breathe out. One more time. Breathe in, breathe out. And now you are opening your eyes slowly and come back with us. I hope you are feeling more relaxed and you are more concentrated with us. So how do you feel now? We would love to hear one voice or two, or maybe you can share with us in the chat. How do you feel?
I must say, Rita, I've been worrying about this webinar for a couple of weeks because it's a big step for us, and we put a lot of work into it. Just then was the first time I think my whole body just went, "It's okay, relax." So thank you for that, Rita.
Wow, that's amazing. You are feeling your heart rate coming slowly. Yeah, that's amazing. And as we are moving forward, we would love to see your feelings in the chat also, because now we are going to our next exercise that is centering. And since we are talking about person-centered care, we are going to have a soften, soothe, and allow centering exercise. So this works with emotional pain as well as physical pain. And this exercise is based on Paul Gilbert exercise. So maybe some of you have been already done this exercise. Maybe others, it is something new, but we can call it also noticing. So we are going to do some noticing together. And to do it, please be sure to take a seat, to be comfortable on your seat. Your feet are on the floor so that you can feel the ground beneath your feet. And just notice what you can around you. You can close your eyes while doing this if you feel it more useful for you, or just you can notice some point around you. Notice where your body connects with where you are sitting. Your body connects with where you are sitting Feel where your body is, where your shoulders are. See if you might be of a little bit of stiffness on those shoulders, on your neck. Try to notice this. Take a breath in. Just one, two thing breathe in. And as you take this breath in, I want you to notice whether there is another part of your body where you might be holding a little bit of tension, a little bit of pain. This is your body, what you are feeling. Maybe it is your stomach. Maybe this is on the chest. You can put your hands. Maybe it is your own neck. You can try to touch your throat. It might be helpful in this time to lay your hands on your stomach. As you are doing this, just feel your breath coming in, entering your body, and feel how the way your body is expanding, receiving the breath. You are breathing in. Your breath may have a color. It may be warm. It may be soft. Direct this breeze, this softness, this warmth from this color that you are sensing to the place where you might be holding some tension. As you are breathing, see whether you can soften the edge of that tension. Just smoothing it, acknowledging it, accepting it. Soften the edge. Breathe in. Just soften the edge. Feel your breath coming in. Your breath is rising and slowing. You can say to yourself some kind words, maybe words that you would say to somebody who you see struggling. You are holding the pain. Soften the pain. Smooth. Thoughts. You might notice some thoughts coming to your head. Maybe you are distracted with those thoughts on what you have done before. Maybe you are thinking what you will be doing next. Don't judge yourself. Just let those thoughts go by them. See them pass like a cloud in the sky. Direct your attention back to your breath. Breathe in. Breathe out. Softening, soothing, allowing your breathing. Breathe in. Be kind to yourself. Notice where you have pain. Touch this pain. Soothe this pain. Breathe in once more. Breathe out once more. And as we are coming back, open softly your eyes and notice where you are and who is around you. And you can shake it off and come back with us. Hopefully, you are now feeling more kind and you are more centering with us for the next few exercises. And also, we would love to hear from you. How do you feel now? How the centering exercises is helping you to be more centered. You feel free to share in the chat or just open your microphone and share with us. We'd love to hear your voices. Or maybe you can share in the
Oh, hi.
chat. Hi. Yes.
Um, Feeling very relieved right now, very relaxed. That was quite the experience. I was not expecting that for sure.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And we can see Khulud from the chat feeling much more relaxed thanks to these exercises. Thank you for sharing. Oh, yawning. Yeah, this is one also of the practices that calm the anxiety. Thank you for sharing. More comfortable, relax. And as you are sharing in the chat, we can go back to Carl to continue our practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Really wonderful demonstration of how we can use some practices, meditative mindfulness, centering to bring us back to ourselves, to relax us, to release tension, all of those things. Really crucial to use as a starting point. I'm adding another exercise in here, which is more fun and interactive because I want to demonstrate that not only are we trying to make inroads and give you techniques for centering and everything like that. We want to use activities and games from drama and other things like that that are fun, engaging, and make us want to come back to the learning rather than, not. So this activity, we need as many cameras and microphones on for the panelists as possible, please. It's a very simple activity. It's called Count from 1 to 20. And all we're going to be doing is as a group, we're going to try to count from 1 to 20. There are a couple of rules. More fun, is that possible? I think it is, CJ. It's always possible to have more fun. So the rules are we cannot count consecutively. So I can't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have to wait for someone else to count before I can count again. If we hear two people counting at once, we have to go back to the start. Any missteps, we have to go back to the start of one. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. I want us all to think about everything we've learned today and think, what can we do? What can we put into practice with this activity to see it be a success? So hopefully everyone understands, and let's give it a go. 1,
2,
that was a Zoom one there. We had Hajar and CJ had said 2, so we've got to be mindful as well. Communicating over Zoom presents extra challenges. So 1,
2,
3,
4,
5.
5,
oh. 1,
2, 3,
4, 5, 6,
7,
1,
2,
3,
4,
5,
6, 7,
8,
9.
9,
1,
2,
3,
1.
2,
2.
We're going to pause here. Just check in with yourself. Who on this panel who've been doing the game, who's been breathing consciously? Who's been holding their breath? I was holding my breath a little bit. Let's make sure we plant our feet nice and firm on the ground, relax our body, relax our shoulders and our spine and our jaw. And just be conscious as we breathe. We're breathing in for 6 and out for 6. If we can keep that pattern as the flow, that would be great. 1,
2,
3,
4,
5, 6,
7,
8,
9,
10,
11,
12,
13,
14,
15,
16,
17,
18, 19.
20.
Yay!
Well done.
Awesome.
Why do you think we use that activity? Any thoughts, anybody?
To learn how to listen well to others.
It's a good start, Khalid, for sure, to learn how to listen well to others. Any other reason we use that activity? Kate?
I believe it's also to observe cues from the people we're listening to.
Very good point. Yeah, listening, including listening to the cues that people are giving. Exactly right. Yes. Anybody else? Any other thoughts why we might use that?
I
very
think it's
focused. Need to be focused.
Oh, so Lingo Matthew saying focus? Absolutely. A huge amount of focus required. And I think Hajar, were you saying something as well?
Do not precipitate to respond.
Sorry, Hajar, I didn't catch that. Would you
Do not respond fast.
to take our time?
patience, you means. Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, there's an element of trust as well,
Interesting. What do you mean by that, CJ?
in that you think someone is going to do it and step in, but you get to the stage where you feel slightly uncomfortable if somebody hasn't. So therefore, you feel as though you need to make the move, make sure that the loop continues to be made.
Excellent point. Yeah. Who wants to contribute? Who likes sitting back? All of those things too. Other thing that we do this for is about learning about failure and learning that failure doesn't always mean a full stop. Failure can mean just another point in the journey. And in this case, we do this activity, and we were very, very good. This panel was fantastic, but especially on Zoom, it goes wrong quite a lot. And especially once you start getting into the higher numbers, that tension rises. Oh my God, there's going to be a failure. What are we going to do? And how that affects your body, how that affects your breath, how that affects your concentration and your ability to focus. Very, very important. All of those things you shared, absolutely right. That's why we do the exercise. One of the main things it is about is attention and paying attention to the cues, as you said, Kate, that people are giving. On that, we're going to go straight into the next activity. So keep cameras and microphones on, please. I'm going to invite the panel to stand. Attendees, you can do this as well. You can take part in doing this in your own space as well. It's a shame, but not a worry. And we're going to do an exercise called Aikido. It's a Japanese martial art. We're going to do one of the warm-up cycles for Aikido. What I want us to do whilst we're doing them, and I'll guide you through the movement and the breathing because it synchronizes practice. You try to match the speed of everyone you can see on the panel. So if you notice you're going too fast, slow down. If you notice compared to everyone else, you're going really slowly, Okay. So let's stand feet shoulder width apart. If you don't know how to do that, bring your feet together like this. Point your toes outwards and then feet up. Then you've got a nice shoulder width stance there. Nice and loose on the knees. You're not locked out now. And just nice and relaxed in the body. And follow me for now, making sure that we're going at the same speed. Bring your hands to your center, facing upwards. Breathing in, bring your hands up to your chin. Turn them facing palms down. Breathing out, hands go down to the floor. And I'm not going to go all the way down because otherwise you wouldn't be able to hear me. But following Pat, lean all the way down until you're hanging all the way from your tailbone. And then breathe in, hands up onto the side. Look up at your hands above your head. And clasp your hands together. Breathing out, hands come down in front of your face. And look ahead. Perfect. Breathing in, hands up to the front. And breathing out, hands down to the side. Breathing in, hands back up. Clasp your hands over your head again. And then let all of the breath out and sound like this. Ha! The center. And Nikechi's delayed in her zoom. Back to the center. Let's try to match the speed of everyone else here. I know it's tough with Zoom and delays and everything like that. Let's do our best. Again, hands come up. Turn them down, breathing out, down to the floor. Breathing in, hands come to the side and up to the ceiling. Looking up at your hands, breathing out, hands come down in front of your face. Look ahead. Breathing in, hands come up. And breathing out, they come down to the sides. Breathing in, back out to the sides. Clasp your hand. You know what comes next. Ha! Ha! Now we're going to do twice more, but that's that flow, that movement. This time I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to lead you, I'm not going to guide you. What this means is we have to rely on the group around us, and again, copy the movement that everybody else is doing. You notice that you're going slow, speed up. You notice you're going fast. Let's see how much of a group movement we can produce together. Okay. That's it. Big. Same speed as everyone in the room. Ha! Ha!
Kate was on that.
Thank you very much, and you can return to your seats. So, usually in the courses we start at this point talking about the idea of presence and what sympathetic presence means. We talked a lot about that in the webinar session today, but usually in our sessions, the Aikido sequence is the activity we do to bring us together as a group, to bring our attentive attention, our conscious attention to each other and to the room. And for me, the thought I always have is I'm no longer thinking about what's for dinner. I'm thinking about what we're doing in this room, synchronizing our breaths and movements across the world. I'm always thinking about dinner. I'm a hungry person, born hungry. But that's what we usually talk about now. We've talked about sympathetic presence already in the webinar, so we're not going to spend too long talking about that. What I would say is these things and these feelings are so much easier to experience and to explain. I think feeling a communal presence like that just immediately shows you what a sympathetic presence could be and what it could mean. It could take 20 minutes to talk about it, but we just felt it in 3 or 4 in more depth than I think we could manage in that 20 minutes. Conscious of time, I want to hand straight to Asma to take us through probably the cornerstone of our approach to communication and person-centered communication, I would say. Asma, straight to you.
Thank you, Carl. So the thing that I'm going to start with is about the actions. And when we are talking about the actions is the things that you do for someone else, to someone else, let's say. So it's a transitive verb. It's like I protect you, or I ignore you, or I observe you. So it's the actions that you are doing in order to achieve your objective. You have an objective, you do the action for someone else to achieve it. So I'm going to ask all of you just to drop in the chat box while we are going through this exercise. What are the actions in this transitive verbs that you think it's appropriate for your work? The nursing, let's say, for nursing to be a person-centered care. If you could just drop in the chat box what actions you think is appropriate for this one. Maybe Rita saying is I see you. That's great. What else do you think there is actions that could be used in the person-centered care? And it has to be a transitive verb, as we said. I do something to you. I validate you. I encourage you. I trust you. I respect you. I hear you. Say it as I am doing something to you, not I am hearing you. I understand how you feel. I respect, I hear you, I understand, I feel. That's great. I value you. And I listen to you. So it's the things that you are doing to the others for your objectives, to achieve your objectives. Maybe I would suggest also I care for you, since we are talking about caring and person-centered care. So let's say that we are going to do this exercise. We are going to talk about the non-verbal actions that you could do to others. So first of all, think about the objectives that you want to achieve. So if you are, let's say, observing someone, I observe you. What is your objective from that observation? Is it just to, let's say, to identify the problem or just to be there for them? If you are threatening someone, I threaten you because I want you to take your medicine and to be healed or cured. So this is your objectives, but this is the actions that you are doing. Now let's start with the nonverbal actions. I'm gonna ask if you could just open your cameras, please. The one with the panelists and the others, if you could just open your cameras. Now, I'm going to ask you to pick a face on the screen, one of the faces that on the video here, and to play the actions that I'm going to tell you. Okay, so pick any face on the screen, just don't say anything, just think about that objective, that I observe you or I listen to you, whatever action I am going to give you, think about it and do play that actions at your face while picking that face on the screen. So now pick the face and holding the thought that the actions you are going to play is, I admire you. That's great. Now I'm going to ask you to pick another face on the screen and play the action, I listen to you. And now pick another face on the screen and play the action, I protect you. Okay, now let's try something other than this. I'm going to ask you to pick a face on the screen. If you're not comfortable with it, maybe you just pick my face, or I don't know. We are going to ask you to play an action like I reject you. And now I'm going to ask you to play the action, I observe you. While playing these, thank you all, you can shake it that all. While playing these actions, picking the face and playing these actions, if you just noticed how the facial expression is changing, how the level of breath is changing, and maybe I'm going to ask some of you to say, how did they feel at some actions? So first of all, when I asked you to do the I admire you, let's say, there was a lot of smiley faces on the screen. So how did you feel being admired, let's say, if anyone could?
I'm just so
it
used
felt,
to sorry.
oh, thank you. It felt warm, felt very comforting.
Comforting and warm. Okay, so let's ask about the opposite feelings. How did you feel when there was the action that I reject you?
Horrible.
Anyone else?
I found my own face kind of closing down more as well when I was feeling rejected.
I found myself questioning, why am I rejecting you and I don't even know you? Like that's what was on my mind. I was so uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, it's just a game, but you are doing these actions sometimes. That's why we said that you just keep the thought that you are going to play, the thought that you are doing this thing. So maybe this would give you that one important thing that you have to ask, how did you feel when there was the action, I observe you? How did it feel to be observed? Anxious, heartbreaking. Why heartbreaking? To be observed? Or I'm just getting this late. Maybe it's for the previous question.
Yeah, heartbreaking for reject it was.
Yeah, slightly uncomfortable
Anxious,
being observed.
uncomfortable, yes. Did anyone else feel something else? Stressful. It's all negative feelings. No one, yeah, Kat?
It's not like it wasn't like you were being with them and observing them. It was like you're being watched.
So the thing that we are trying to say here, that when you are doing actions, you have to think about what you are doing to others and how they feel about what you are doing them. So if you are talking to a patient or doing something to a patient, just think about this, what you are doing to him and how he feels about this thing. Maybe if you are just threatening him, your objective is to, let's say, as we said, make him or convince him to take the medication to protect him, but he get that the way you are doing to him is that you are threatening him and he's feeling, let's say, uncomfortable, or maybe feeling threatening is something uncomfortable. So he get the things different than the things that you are objecting to do it. So let's always keep in mind when we are doing any actions that how, let's say, what we are doing to others and how they are feeling about this. Yes, Seiji.
I think it's also really important that our verbal and non-verbal communication aligns, because even though we might be saying one thing, non-verbal communication can communicate something very differently. And as healthcare professionals, that's really important. You know, if we are saying that we trust somebody and that we are caring for somebody, and yet our non-verbal communication is not supporting that, I think that that has more sway than the words. You know, to say, I do care for you, but actually, if you're doing it in a way that is not demonstrating that, has more effect. So I think that we need to be really, really aware of that.
Yes, that's right. And the truth is, when the actions and the objectives are not aligned together, we're at that point where the poor communication is happening. That's why we have to keep in mind this point. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you just to be aware of this. While we're doing the previous exercises, the Aikido exercises and the centering exercises, what do you think the actions that were played and what you feel about it? What were the objectives that you get from there? Let's say about the actions that were played and how did you feel about it? You can drop in the chat box if you don't want to speak.
Would it be correct in saying, Asma, there were actions that I was playing to myself? Is that possible?
While doing the exercise, yes.
I think with the Aikido, there's a bit of I reflect you or I mirror you. So we're trying to copy each other. So for the Aikido, there could be some I mirror you, I copy you, I reflect you.
Yeah, that's great, Carl. Anyone else could get some actions?
I think with Rita's centering, Asma, I think there was a bit of I comfort you, I want to heal you. There was definitely especially around the softening the edges of the stress bit. Yeah, there was definitely that action coming through.
That's great, man. Thank you. I don't know if someone wanted to speak. It just CJ saying that when they don't align, it can contribute to mistrust. Yes, as we said, it mainly go to poor communication where the mistakes and the breakdown is over there. So this is about the actions. Now, because we talked about the actions and how it should be aligned with your objectives, now I will handle you to another exercise with my colleague Rita. It's about the objectives. To you, Rita.
Thank you, Asma. It's really great how we are feeling now and how we are concentrating and more person-centered from all the globe together in this small screen. And as you said, objective is something very important, but objective is something that we want to achieve. Is it what do we or do others want? We are going to see. So the concept of these objectives is explored in actor training to help the actors to perform their roles and their characters. But in nursing, also we have objectives and we want to achieve with the patient, with his family, and with others or colleague also. So we have to identify a very clear and simple objective for ourselves or for the character that we are providing to focus on our role play. So the whole idea here is kind of acting, but this acting in nurses is like our daily life, our daily story with the patients and with their families and even with our colleagues. So what we are going to express here is the first step towards the shared decision making. Because when we have shared objectives, we can begin to speak about decision making and person-centered care. So this is a simple exercise when we are going to ask one person to turn the camera off, and the other person is going to ask the person who has his camera off to turn the camera on, and we will be modeling in a second. So the person who has the camera off will only open the camera if he or she feels that like they are convinced and they want to open the camera. So it's not just about what we want, but about what the other person wants. And the person who's asking is only using the word turn your camera on. So we are going to explore by using different action, by using our voice, our breath to attain our objective. So I'm going to ask Carl to turn his camera off, and I'm going to model it for a second, and we will try to see if Carl will accept to turn his camera on for me. This is my objective. Hopefully, he will have the same objective. So Carl, please turn your camera on. Carl, please turn your camera on. Carl, turn on your camera. Carl, can you hear me? Please turn your camera on. Could you turn your camera on? Carl, please turn your camera on. Thank you. So, as you can notice, the different action, even the different body status that we are using while speaking to the person, not just our voice, but also a whole body that is present here and how it is interfering in this simple question and the simple ask of turn your camera on. And we are going to ask for volunteers to try to practice. So who are our two volunteers who have just to one turn his camera or her camera off and the other one ask to turn on. So it's about your objective to let your colleague to turn on. Who I have as volunteer? Okay,
Khulud hand is up.
Khulud.
Yeah.
Okay, who's with Khulud? We need someone to volunteer. So Khulud is the person who's asking the other person to turn the camera on. And okay, no worries, Kate. Who's partnering with Khulud? If
I will
okay, Asma.
volunteer, Rita. Yes, okay.
Thank you. Okay. So we can all turn our camera off to leave the space for them. And now to you, Khulud, to attain your objective.
Asma, turn your camera on, please. Turn your camera on. Can you turn your camera on? Turn your camera on, please. Turn your camera on. Asma, can you turn your camera? Can you turn your camera on, please? Asma, turn your camera on.
Thank you, Khulud and Asma. And I want to ask you, what was your objective, Khulud? How did it felt for you? If you want to
Yeah,
share
I
with
tried
us.
with my body language to tell her to turn her camera on. I tried to speak with my body's language that I respect her. Sometimes I tried to tell her that I'm frustrated. Sometimes that I'm really in need of her to turn her camera on. Yeah, I've tried different objectives while conveying that with my body, with my voice, um, with with my verbal and nonverbal communication. So yeah, that's what I wanted to convey. I hope that she can tell that I was trying to do that.
Thank you for sharing, Khulud. Yes, CJ.
I think what also becomes real clear is the power imbalance in this situation. It was really uncomfortable watching that interaction because Asma had all the power, absolutely all the
Yes.
power. And it really did feel uncomfortable at times. It felt as though, what else is she going to have to do to try and get her to turn this on? And it felt almost at the end as though she just kind of like went, oh, okay, I'll turn it on. You know, why didn't you ask me? It didn't feel as though it was one particular thing. It just felt like, okay, I've had the power now. I'm just going to do it. But yeah, it did feel slightly uncomfortable watching.
Did you at any time feel like Khulud has the power, even with her camera on? At any time, some power with Khulud?
Yes, we were kind of conveying to the audience that in some situations, in some verbatims, that I was performing a high status, or sometimes I'm performing a low status while talking to Asma and convincing her to turn her camera on. Yes, I think sometimes I was And actually, I think that when I was a little bit aggressive, I think that I made myself feel like I was in a high status. But when I was a little bit kind, trying to convince her kindly and all, I think that I was not in a low status, but I was conveying like we were in a parallel situation, like we were on the same level of not importance, but on the same level of, if you want, personhood, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, as like what Carl is saying, is that I commend you. Yes, I saw your hand, Pat. You want to intervene?
Yeah, I think there's two things here as well that that strike me that we could have used her in our in achieving our objective. So would you like to would you like to put your camera on? Could you possibly put your camera on so we could try to involve her so that she doesn't feel as though she's being done to, it's being done with her? Or, would you like to share with me why you haven't got your camera on? Might be a way of engaging her a little bit in that. Again, it means sort of sharing the power. Um, and, that's it's kind of a difficult thing. If you've gone down the route of I'm the powerful one and then you're kind of groveling, it doesn't seem sincere. And I think that that's one of the big issues, that when you were approaching it later in the day, which was, could you possibly take your camera? It didn't sound sincere at all. It just sounded like you wanted her to do something. So I think that that's something that we need to be aware of within our verbal communication as well.
Rita, I think on both examples, actually, I think the same action worked. And I think the action was, and this would be interesting to hear from yourself and from Salud, was I think the action that worked there towards the end was I intrigue you. I intrigue you. Almost like invited a little bit of curiosity. And there was a pause after the name, so it was Carl, turn your, I was trying to, because it was, it both turned a very similar action on a very similar action. I don't think the power had, it's not really, it's just about the power of the action. So,
folks, I'm gonna pull our attention here a little bit and just offer first a round of applause for Rita and all the other facilitators and panelists who joined that session, and also a round of applause and a congrats to all of our presenters in the first part. The action I might be intrigued, it might be I intrigue you. I think so, Pat. Yeah, I invite you in, I coax you, I cajole you, all these. And the power of actions, folks, is you can be very precise with what you're trying to do. And often the more you align it with what you're trying to do as in your objective, the more effective it will be. And the more that we're conscious of the objective of the other person, the more that we can help them achieve what they want to help us achieve what we want. That's probably the trick to communication that we teach the most, is that if you're aware of what you want to achieve and what the other person wants to achieve, and you're aware that they're different, we're thinking person-centered wise, we're not all wanting to achieve the same thing. We know that they're different. And how do we help them achieve their objective to help us achieve ours? But folks, that's been our very first ever webinar on on anything really. And today has been on person-centered communication. In the chat box there, I've put a link. So folks, if you've never done a health action training course and you'd like to do one, over the next 3 years, we're going to have many, many different courses come up. Please do join that waiting list to hear about the courses as soon as possible, as soon as they come up. Folks who've already done health action training courses, there's no need for you to fill out that link. You're already with us. You're already on that pathway. You can fill out if you really want. That's absolutely fine. Detailed information on the panelists team. Good question, AM. Possibly reach out to me directly, and I can see what kind of information you're after, and I can tie you up with that. I'm delighted to call this to a close, our very first webinar, and I want to highlight for you that our next one isn't far away. We have 6 coming up over this calendar year, September to September, and then a further 6 the 2 years after that. So we have 18 webinars over the next 3 years. We're going to be using this space to explore all sorts of different topics, and I can share with you on the 16th of December, which is a Monday. They'll always be on a Monday, barring some changes. We're going to be looking at dementia and person-centered care. So if you think that sounds interesting, if you think you've got colleagues or friends who would find that interesting, invite them towards that webinar. More information will be available through our networks, through our social networks. So please, join all of our social medias because all the up-to-date information's there. Keep an eye on our websites, but most of the stuff is on the social media at the moment. We're currently transporting our website a little bit, so it might be a bit hit and miss. Social media is where to find it, or on the waiting lists for those courses that will reach you through that. One thing I will mention is the webinars will be slightly different. Some of them will be slightly different in that we will be on location. We'll maybe talk more about those as the series progresses, but the very first on location webinar we have will be in April, and we're going to be visiting India. And hopefully we're going to have a wonderful, well, hopefully it will work. Same idea, folks, the same principle that the first part of the session will be looking at the topic that we choose for that webinar. And then the second half will have a panel like we've got now of people from the attendees list who join us for practical activities. The in-person one is going to be much easier to do that. We'll have a group of people there that you can watch through the live streaming on Zoom and can learn from as we do it. So that's all information really I have to give you all. I just return to a very big thank you to everyone who shared. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. I'm going to put my email into the chat box now. So if you do have questions, you don't have my email, you can reach out to me that way. We should be easy enough to find contact details for us on socials. You can reach out on our socials and everything like that. I'll stop waffling. I'll say good night. Have a wonderful evening or morning or afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And I hope to see as many of you on 16th of December to explore dementia and person-centered care. Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Yourselves. Bye, everyone.